All right, we are busting through 20 different fitness myths today because honestly, I don't know that there's any sphere that has more misinformation than the nutrition and fitness space. And I can appreciate that if you are someone who is trying to tackle your fitness and nutrition, it can be so confusing and so frustrating trying to navigate through the sea of misinformation and nonsense that is out there and trying to take steps that are actually going to benefit you. And so I'm going to clear some of these up today because I want to help you tackle your fitness and nutrition in a way that's actually going to be productive. All right, let's dive into this. Okay, we are kicking this off with what I would call the poster child of fitness misinformation. And it's just because I hear this so much. This just has to be the most common thing that I hear, and it's just not true. And that is that lifting heavy will make you bulky. No. Listen, muscle growth is one of these things that is very, very slow and takes a ton of intentional effort to build, okay? I think a lot of people avoid strength training because they have this misconception that they're gonna touch a dumbbell and wake up the next morning looking like Arnold. It doesn't work that way. I mean, hell, I wish it worked that way. I've been lifting heavy for almost 8 years and hitting my protein goal consistently and actively trying to get bigger muscles, and still, I'm not bulky, right? Like it doesn't happen overnight. It is one of those things that you can achieve, but in order to achieve it, you're gonna have to put in years and years of consistent, focused effort on that goal. It actually has to be something that you are actively striving to achieve. Otherwise, that's not going to happen, right? You're not going to lift weights a couple of times and suddenly wake up with these giant muscles. That's not how it works. There are so many benefits to strength training. There's so many benefits for your health and longevity. There's so many benefits outside of just your physical appearance, and I don't want fear of looking bulky to be the thing that deters you from doing it, because it's going to benefit you in so many other ways. And honestly, if you don't want to be bulky and that's not what you're working towards, it's not going to happen. Which ties into the second myth that I want to address. And this is that heavy weights make you bulky and lighter weights get you toned. I am really not a fan of the verbiage toned as it relates to a certain type of physique, because I think people don't fully understand what that means. That toned, quote unquote, look that people are wanting to achieve. Essentially what that is having some visible kind of shape and definition to your body as a result of visible muscle tissue. How do you achieve visible muscle tissue, right? You have to put in steps to build your muscles. And research does show that when taken close to failure, you can achieve similar muscle growth from lighter versus heavy loads as long as you are pushing yourself and putting in the work and progressively overloading and actually creating the stimulus for your muscle to grow. Where you won't see it, though, is what I think the common approach is of people who are wanting to get toned, and that is taking a lighter weight, like taking a 5-pound dumbbell and banging out 4 sets of 12 reps and never progressing from there, right? Week after week, month after month, year after year, you continue to pick up the same dumbbell, bang out the same 12 reps, and you never push yourself further than that because you're afraid of lifting too heavy, right? You will not achieve the look you're trying to achieve by taking that route. You have to build the muscle tissue first in order for it to be visible, right? That is how it works. I think we can all recognize that just being small and petite does not equate to the kind of like toned look that you're probably going for. People who are very thin but don't have a lot of visible muscle mass do not have that kind of look that people equate with being quote unquote toned. It involves you having some visible muscle, and in order to have that, you have to put in the work to build it. And there's not certain weights that are designed to get you that look, right? It is just merely a function of you creating repeated stimulus for your muscle to grow. You do not need to lift super light weights in order to get toned. Don't be afraid to push yourself, okay? You're probably capable of lifting a lot more than you think, and it's probably going to get you the results that you're actually looking for if you're willing to push yourself a little bit. The third one I want to address is that creatine causes weight gain. And this is a common misconception, I think, especially among women. I think this tends to be one of the major hangups that women have when it comes to deciding whether or not to take creatine. Some men as well, but you typically you see this more often with females. Because you hear this notion that creatine makes you retain more water. And I think when we hear that, we equate that with water being retained kind of underneath the skin, that kind of swollen, bloated look. That is kind of what we equate with water retention. And people don't want to look swollen and bloated, right? And so they avoid taking creatine because they think that it's going to make them look just like bloaty and overweight. And that's not what they're going for. Well, that's actually not true. Creatine will make you retain more water, but it's where the water retention is taking place that's important to know. The water retention is taking place intracellularly, so inside the cells, and more specifically inside the cells of your muscle tissue. So the thing that is getting larger in size as a result of the water retention is not your skin, right? It's not these like kind of superficial areas. What it is it's your actual muscle tissue and muscle bellies that is going to expand in size as a result of the intracellular water retention. So where you're going to see changes to your body composition as a result of this is that your entire body doesn't get bigger. Instead, what gets bigger is the muscles, right? So your muscles will look a little bit more defined, a little bit more visible. It's not going to make it look like you have more fatty tissue on your body because that's not where the water's being retained. It is simply going to make your muscles look a little bit more defined. Aside from the increased capacity for you to work your muscles during your workout, there are so many benefits to your overall health and longevity from taking creatine that if you are avoiding it because of fear of looking bloated or gaining weight, you're missing out on a very useful tool. And if you're interested, I actually did an entire episode breaking down the benefits of taking creatine. I will link it in the description below if you want to check that out. The fourth myth is that you need to train for at least an hour to see results. Not true. There is no magic number, right? You do not have to reach the 60-minute mark or reach a certain number of exercises because somebody told you that that is the goalpost needed for you to make progress, right? If you are starting from zero, any effort matters. Anything that you do is going to make a difference, right? Even if it's just going in there and doing 5-10 minutes or doing one exercise, right? It makes a difference and you will see results from that. It's all about what your current baseline is and what you build on from there, right? And this can be achieved in so many different ways that go beyond just timing, right? This could be overall weight or reps or slowing down your movements to get a little bit of control and increased resistance. There's so many things you can do in order to add a little bit more challenge and kind of progressively overload your body. You don't have to work out for an hour to see the results you're looking for. Okay, there's no magic number that is going to be required in order for you to see results. Number 5 is, in order to lose weight, I just need to keep eating less. This is a common one, and this is how people often get into that yo-yo dieting cycle of severely restricting to a point that's just not sustainable and doing this for a short period of time, but because it's so restrictive and it's not sustainable, they tend to backslide into their old habits and then they gain the weight back. And then as a result, you get super restrictive again, lose the weight, can't maintain it, you backslide, you gain the weight back. And you keep going in this kind of yo-yo diet cycle because you've created a scenario that's just not sustainable. And the other problem with this is that your metabolism is going to adapt over time. So if you are repeatedly underfeeding your body is going to see that as a threat to your survival, okay? It is going to say, hey, there's not enough food coming in, so in order to maintain myself, I need to lower the amount of calories that I'm burning throughout the day in order to conserve some of this energy. So your metabolism will actually slow down. And this is why if you are someone who's kind of in this repeated yo-yo dieting cycle, it can feel so much harder to keep the weight off or lose the weight again with every repeated cycle because each time you do this, your metabolism has slowed down a little bit. So your baseline maintenance calories has gone down. So sometimes the solution is not just eating less. It's not that black and white a lot of the times. There are some scenarios where it would be largely in your interest to first focus on trying to repair your metabolism. And this can be achieved by slowly increasing your calories and progressively overloading with your resistance training and trying to build more muscle and slowly moving your baseline metabolic rate up a little bit. And then starting from a higher baseline, if you're looking to lose weight from there, you can cut your calories down to a level that's more sustainable. And the reason that this works is because muscle tissue is one of the most metabolically active tissues in your body, meaning that throughout the course of the day, it is going to burn more calories than some of the other tissues in your body. And so having more muscle tissue will in turn increase your metabolic rate. And another thing to keep in mind if you are somebody who's continuously just eating less and less in order to try and achieve a weight loss goal, because muscle tissue is so metabolically active, it is going to be the first thing that your body starts to pare down when you're eating too little, right? If your body is purely trying to survive on the tiny amount of calories that you're giving it, in order to reduce its daily caloric demand, it's going to start paring off the most metabolically active tissue, right? The most demanding tissue, and that's your muscle. And so you may see your weight on the scale dropping, but there's a good chance you're losing a good deal of muscle in the process if you're not taking steps to preserve it, like resistance training or hitting your protein goal. So that's just something to be mindful of. I think sometimes losing weight can overshadow basic health maintenance. You being in a smaller body is not necessarily what is going to be healthiest for you. And I think there's an important distinction to make there. Number 6 is if the scale is not moving, you're not making progress. Again, this is a really common misconception, and it's something that can derail a lot of people if they are getting into resistance training. The reason for this is because if you are strength training and you're doing exercises and you're eating in a way that is going to be conducive to muscle growth, while you might be losing weight and you might be losing fat over time, you may also be gaining muscle. And the thing to keep in mind here is that muscle tissue is much more dense than fat tissue. So if we were to take the same volume of fat tissue and compare it against the same volume of muscle tissue, the muscle is actually going to weigh more. It's heavier because it's more dense. And so the result of this is if you are losing fat and building muscle at the same time, it will result in you having a smaller frame because muscle takes up less space. But what you may see as a result of this is the pounds on the scale that you may have lost from fat tissue might be similar to the pounds that you've gained on the scale because of muscle tissue. And so this is kind of the ideal scenario, honestly. I've heard other people refer to this as being in the Goldilocks zone, where you are simultaneously losing fat and gaining muscle. It's a good sign. It's a good sign that you're on the right track with what you're doing. But what it means is that when you go and stand on the scale in the morning, the number is not going to fluctuate in any sort of major way. And most people see this and course correct in a way that they don't need to because they don't think they're making progress. And so while the scale gives you some information, it is a small piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire thing. When you are looking at your weight on the scale, I want you to put it in a bucket along with other factors like what's your training schedule been like? What's your diet been like? How do you feel in your body? How's your energy? How's your sleep? How's your libido? How is all of these other things as a function of your overall health? How do you feel? How does your body look, right? When you look in the mirror, do you notice changes with your actual body shape and structure? How do your clothes fit, right? You might find if you are in this basket where you're losing fat and building muscle, your body composition is changing. And so the way clothing fits you is going to start changing. You might find it's a little bit smaller kind of in the abdominal area. You might find things like your butt and your shoulders and your biceps. Clothing might be tighter in those areas, right? And so paying attention to all of these factors and putting them all together as a cohesive picture of what is going on is going to be much more useful for you in gauging where you're actually at instead of just looking at the number on the scale and extrapolating how you're doing based on that. It is just a small piece of the puzzle. Number 7 is that in order to lose the weight or be healthier, I have to go through some sort of extreme transformation. This is something that I think gets perpetuated a lot because of things like TV shows and social media, because what is going to get more clicks and more attention than those extreme transformations, right? The 6-month extreme weight loss before and after photos, or the 6-month before and after I put on a ton of muscle and did all this shit in a short period of time, right? It's exciting to see. It gets a lot of engagement and it gets a lot of attention because it's interesting. It's novel, right? We've achieved this really substantial thing in a really short period of time. And it creates this narrative that needs to be the way you tackle your own health and fitness journey, is by making really extreme changes in order to achieve the body you're wanting in as short a period as possible. The problem with this is that when you try to go through some sort of extreme transformation to get where you want to go, the sustainability aspect of it is completely lost. Research shows that extreme dieting often comes with a really high rate of relapse. And so while people may achieve this really extreme transformation in a short period of time, they lack the ability to maintain it over the long term. A really common example of this is contestants on the show that used to exist, The Biggest Loser, where people who were significantly overweight came in and they were put on really extreme diet and exercise plans in order to lose as much weight as they possibly could throughout the course of the show. The problem is, these people were put on really extreme, not sustainable plans in order to achieve the weight loss that they achieved, and they weren't really given the tools to maintain it over the long term. And going back to the metabolic adaptations that I talked about earlier, this is also taking place, right? So when you're going through this really extreme dieting and really extreme exercise in order to lose weight really quickly, your metabolism and your body is adapting to that. And so suddenly the baseline of what is required for you to maintain that physique is that extreme amount of dieting and is that extreme amount of exercise, which is not going to be sustainable. So the minute you stop doing it, the weight starts to creep back on. Okay? So when you are starting any sort of fitness or health transformation journey, I don't want you to focus on quick changes. I don't want you to try and focus on doing this as fast as possible. The goal here is sustainability. The goal is for you to be able to do it over the long term, right? Because if you can't maintain it as a lifestyle, it doesn't matter, right? There's not a lot of value in you losing 30 pounds in 1 month and then not being able to keep it off at all, right? That's not a useful thing for you to do long term. So, well, it doesn't seem as glamorous, it doesn't seem as flashy and fun. Focus on making really small changes, maintaining it over time until it feels like a consistent part of your routine, and then add in another small change and kind of slowly step stone your way from there so that the results you achieve are results that you can actually keep. Number 8 is fasted cardio burns more fat. Research shows that fasted versus fed cardio actually does not show any significant difference in the amount of fat burned throughout the day. It really does matter what your overall daily caloric consumption is. You simply doing cardio fasted, while it may burn a little bit more fat in the moment, your body is also going to adjust to that and will reduce the amount of fat that you're burning throughout the rest of the day. And so it all kind of balances out at the end of the 24 hours, right? And another point I want to make on this is Dr. Stacy Sims talks a lot about women's specific health recommendations and how common training notions that are really beneficial for men may not be as beneficial for women. And she does talk about the fact that women should actually not be training fasted at all, because women's bodies react to fasted training with a really significant stress response. And so you get this significant increase in cortisol, and your body is going to work really hard to try and keep the resources that it has. And so it's going to work even harder to hang on to the fat tissue that you currently have. And it can actually be to your detriment to be working out fasted if you're a woman. So all in all, not going to make a huge difference in terms of burning more or less fat. If you enjoy doing your cardio fasted, if that just makes you feel better, then all the power to you. But don't do it because you think it's going to make you burn more fat. Number 9 is that all calories are equal. And this is one of those things that is a bit more of a nuanced discussion because you could take two foods, right? You could take a chocolate bar or you could take a pile of fruit and you can weigh out the exact same number of calories of each one. And looking at that objectively, it's the same number of calories either way, right? But they're not completely equal. There are two considerations that I think are important to make when it comes to bracketing calories, if you will. And the first one is nutritional value, right? You are getting so much more from your food aside from just the caloric content. There are all the macro and micronutrients that you're getting from your food that are feeding into how your body functions and operates. And so while you may be able to weigh out the exact same caloric value of candy versus fruit, the nutritional value of the fruit is much higher and you are going to be getting a lot more from it that will be beneficial to your body in other ways. And so numerically the same, but in terms of actual value, quite different. So if you're looking to lose weight and if you're looking to eat in a way that is healthier, it is not simply about just eating a certain number of calories, right? It is also about being mindful of getting all your vitamins and minerals and eating enough protein and like all of these other things that are going to contribute to your body just functioning in a healthier way. Because if you ate nothing but vodka and Oreos all day, you could technically be in a caloric deficit, but are you doing yourself any favors? Not particularly. Maybe you're having a good time, who knows? The other thing that I think is important to consider when it comes to caloric intake is the thermic effect of the food that you're eating. And what this means is that when you eat food, your body has to put in work to digest that food. And so as a result of that, you are burning a certain number of calories in order to digest the food that you've eaten. And this is kind of the thermic effect of the food. And you may have heard this notion before with certain foods that are very low in calories, whereas the calories needed to actually digest the food are comparable to the amount of calories you're consuming from eating the food. So something like celery, I think maybe apples might fall into that category. Don't quote me on it. I just remember hearing this when I was younger. And so that was kind of the first introduction I had to that notion of the thermic effect of food. This is just something to keep in your back pocket, is that depending on the macronutrients you're eating, carbohydrates, fat, or protein, there's going to be a difference in the amount of calories your body burns in order to digest it. And the heaviest hitter out of all of those is protein. Protein burns about 20 to 30% of its calories just being digested, okay? It is the macronutrient with the highest thermic effect, meaning that your body has to work the hardest to digest that particular macronutrient. And so this can be a really helpful tool. So if you are trying to eat in a caloric deficit and you are trying to lose weight, prioritizing your protein can be beneficial for this reason, along with some other things. First of all, like we just talked about, higher thermic effect. So just by function of you eating the same amount of calories, but doing it with a higher protein content, you will burn more calories with digestion. Secondly, protein is also the most satiating macronutrient, and so you will feel fuller for longer, which will make it easier for you to eat in a lower calorie range if that's what you're trying to do. And third, protein is the most important building block for building and maintaining your muscle mass. So if you are trying to lose weight, it can be a really helpful tool to helping you keep the muscle mass that you currently have and not having your body pare all of that down in an attempt to lose weight. Okay, so all of the macronutrients are important. Please don't mishear what I'm saying here. You still need your carbs, you still need your fat, but making a consistent effort to prioritize your protein will serve you very well. Number 10 is protein powder causes kidney damage. And I think this can be tied in along with creatine causing kidney damage. There seems to be a misconception about both, that they are not safe to take because of the renal effects. And the reason that I think this may have come to exist is that protein and creatine are both things that are going to get filtered through your kidneys as they're being, passed through your body. And so it's going to require some work on the part of your kidneys in order to metabolize and utilize these particular things. And If somebody has a known renal impairment, if they have a known kidney issue where your kidneys are not functioning in an optimal way, your nephrologist, so your kidney doctor, if you're seeing one, may recommend that you limit your protein intake and may recommend that you steer clear of certain supplements like creatine because your kidneys are already impaired. So they are not in the position to take on the additional load of these things. However, using either one of these supplements in someone with normal, healthy renal function has been heavily studied and has not shown to be harmful to your kidney function. If your kidneys are healthy, if you do not have a pre-existing kidney condition, you are fine to take creatine and you're fine to take protein powder. Number 11 is there is an optimal time to work out. I think just hard no. The optimal time to work out for any person is going to be the time that you will maintain consistently, right? If I were to tell you that working out at 6 a.m. is the most optimal time to get your workout in and you will see the best results from doing that, but you find it very difficult to work out at 6 a.m. Maybe you're not a morning person. Maybe you have kids you have to get ready for school. Maybe there's a whole plethora of reasons that you cannot work out at 6 a.m. consistently. And so you either work out at 6 a.m. when you can, or you don't do anything at all. Or, on the flip side, you find a schedule that actually works for you and your lifestyle, and you show up to the gym consistently because you're not trying to fit into this time window that doesn't really work for you. You're going to see better results with a consistent, different times, right? It is not about a certain time of day. There's no perfect time for you to work out. The most important thing is that you're going to be able to stick to it consistently, so pick your time based on that. Number 12 is that you need to stretch before your workouts. And again, this is not one of those things where it's a hard yes or a hard no. It's more of a nuanced discussion. So let me explain. Most people equate stretching before their workout with doing static stretches. And so static stretches are when you get into a position and you hold that position for a prolonged period of time in order to relax and stretch out your muscles. And this is often the approach that you will see people take early on in preparing for a workout. The problem with static stretching before a workout is that it doesn't really warm you up or prep the body in the way that you need it to. Instead, what it's going to do is it's going to relax and loosen up a lot of your muscles, which can actually reduce strength and power temporarily. So you may not be able to hit the amount of weight that you want to do during your workout. And it also puts you at an increased risk for injury because everything is more flexible and lax, right? So the amount of control that you may have had otherwise might now be missing as a result of this static stretching. And so, does this mean you do nothing pre-workout? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You need to warm up. But what you don't need to do is a bunch of static stretching. Instead, what you should be focusing on is dynamic stretching and mobility. And so this is stretching in a way that keeps your body in motion and doing movements that are helping prep you for the workout that you're doing, okay? And so this is going to look a little bit different. So yes, you should stretch before your workout, but dynamic stretching. It's more of a nuanced conversation. Number 13, cardio is only for burning calories. This, I think an easy way to explain how this can be wrong is just by giving you an example. If you were to get up and go outside and go for a walk and walk for a couple of hours, you may burn 100 or 200 calories doing that walk. But if you go into your kitchen and you take a couple of cookies out of the package and you eat them, you have immediately compensated for all of the calories that you burned over the hours of walking you just did. The amount of time you would have to dedicate to cardio to burn off all the calories from a poor diet is excessive and not doable for most people. Caloric burn should not be the focus of your cardio. If you are looking to keep yourself in a caloric deficit, exercise can help, but the main focus really needs to come from your nutrition and what you're eating. Really, one of the biggest benefits of cardio and why you should do it on a regular basis is for your cardiovascular health, right? It's for your endurance and your stamina and keeping a strong heart. Because at the end of the day, your heart is a muscle just like all the other muscles in your body. And doing some sort of cardiovascular exercise that is going to get your heart rate up is going to help challenge and strengthen your heart in the process. And that is the biggest benefit, in my opinion, to you doing cardiovascular exercise, and why, in some capacity, it's important to keep it as a part of your regime, but not to just try and burn calories. Number 14 is no pain, no gain. Again, very common notion in the fitness sphere that you have to suffer and you have to be in pain in order to see the results that you want to see. And I think it creates this misconception where we equate soreness and pain and suffering with progress and discipline and getting the results that you want. The problem is, number one, soreness is not a marker of an effective workout. You do not need to be sore after every workout. And in fact, if you've been working out for a very long time, you probably won't be. Soreness after a workout is a result of novelty and increases in volume. And so it's not something you're going to experience after every workout, nor is it something that you should. And as a second aside to this, if you're experiencing a lot of pain and suffering and discomfort during your workout, that can be the sign of a legitimate injury that you actually need to pay attention to, right? Your workout should challenge you, it should be hard, but it shouldn't cause you a bunch of pain. You're setting yourself up for injury by making that the goalpost. The next one I actually had on this list was that you need to feel sore after your workouts, but I think we've just tackled this one in the previous one, okay? So we're just gonna skip right on through this. Muscle growth can happen with or without soreness. It's not necessary, and it's not a marker of an effective workout. Number 16, on a similar vein, is more sweat means a better workout. Sweat is a function of thermoregulation, meaning that it is your body's way of keeping your core body temperature at a certain level. It is not a function of fat or caloric burn. It's not a marker of how successful your workout is. And depending on who the person is, depending on their genetic predisposition, depending on their current hydration levels, depending on their current diet, you may sweat more or less based on all of those factors, and it will happen independently of how effective your workout is, okay? So you being a big sweaty mess does not mean that you had a better workout. And if you're someone who doesn't sweat a whole lot when you're in the gym, doesn't mean your workouts are not effective, right? Just like soreness, sweatiness is not a hallmark sign of a good workout. It's not necessary for you to have done good work in the gym. I personally am not someone who sweats a whole lot, so even when I am in the gym pushing myself really hard, I'm not sweating all that much, but it doesn't mean that what I'm doing has not been useful or productive. Number 17 is that you can spot reduce fat. You can't, okay? You just can't. And anybody on the internet who tells you that you can is a bold-faced liar. You cannot pick a certain part of your body and intentionally just do a ton of exercises in that one area in order to spot reduce the fat from that location. That's not how it works. If your body is operating in a caloric deficit and you are losing fat as a function of that, it's going to happen generally, right? It's going to happen kind of evenly throughout your entire body. You do not get to pick and choose where it's happening. Where doing exercises in a specific area can be useful is in you training a certain area of your body, you can help develop muscle tissue in that area. And so you can make that area look a little bit more defined. And I'm not going to use the word toned. You get my gist. You get what I mean. You can build up muscle tissue in that area, right? So you can kind of pick and choose where you want more definition muscularly, but you cannot spot reduce fat, okay? It's just going to happen generally throughout your whole body. Number 18 is that carbs make you gain weight. Again, fat loss and weight loss comes from a caloric deficit. It is not a result of you cutting out a specific macronutrient group. The reason that you may see people have success with this is because if people are cutting out entire macronutrient groups from their diet, they are probably unknowingly putting themselves in a deficit anyways, okay? But the truth of it is, if you cut out carbs completely and you're still grossly overeating protein and fat to the point where you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose weight anyways. It's not about the macronutrient, okay? You'll often see carbs being cut out of people's diets Because it is kind of the easiest one to play with, right? Your body does require certain amounts of fat and protein to function optimally, so it is harder to take those away in a really safe manner. And also, it's easier, I think, on the whole, when we have something concrete to blame and some easy step to take in order to eliminate our problem, right? You just take away this one thing and that will get you to the goal that you want to achieve. But carbs are essential. Carbs are your body's fuel source. Carbs are like the gasoline in your car, right? You use them for energy. That is how your body functions normally. And yes, I recognize the keto diet is a thing. Yes, I recognize that you can function optimally on a low carb diet, on a low carb keto-like diet. I'm not here to discuss that, okay? We're going to table that discussion for now, but essentially the main takeaway here is that in order to lose weight, you do not need to be cutting out entire food groups, okay? Foods do not have moral value. Certain macronutrients are not good or bad. They all have their own individual benefits, okay? It is really more a function of you being in a caloric deficit than it is you cutting out entire food groups. Number 19, eating at night makes you fat. Again, weight loss, fat loss is going to come down to your overall caloric intake over the 24-hour span. Timing can have a minor impact on your ability to lose weight, but really it is more a function of what you're consuming throughout the entirety of the day. In my opinion, I think part of the reason that eating really late at night can contribute to an increased difficulty in losing weight is because, number one, that tends to be the time that we eat a ton of really high sugar, high calorie foods because our energy is starting to crash and our body is craving more energy. And so as an easy way to replenish that, we crave those really palatable high sugar foods because they're going to give us that instant boost of energy. Second of all, eating late at night, oftentimes what this will result in is you eating and then going to bed shortly afterwards, in which your body doesn't get any sort of movement to help with the digestion and the calorie burn of that food. And on top of that, a lot of people eating right before bed is going to lead to a little bit of gastrointestinal distress, which may not be major, but it may be just enough that it's disrupting your sleep. And there is a lot of research that shows that repeated poor sleep is going to have an impact on your metabolism the following day, and it's going to have an impact on your cravings and appetite. You are going to be hungrier and you're going to crave more of those high sugar, high carb foods because your body's lacking energy because you slept like crap, right? And so this can become a bit of a vicious cycle that can feed into making it harder for you to lose weight. But again, the actual timing here is not so much the issue. If you eat something after 7 p.m. on one day, you're not suddenly going to gain a ton of weight. Number 20 is detox teas and cleanses. This is one of those kind of pseudoscience things. There's not a lot of research to show that these detox teas and cleanses actually remove any meaningful amount of toxins from your body. Your kidneys and liver are already doing that job for you. They are already filtering all of the blood in your body and getting rid of the toxins and excreting them out through your stool and urine. You do not need to drink some fancy tea in order to achieve this. You already have the organs to do that job for you. And don't quote me on this, but something I heard when I was younger that has stuck in my mind ever since is that a lot of these detox teas are actually just teas with senna in them. And senna, if you haven't heard that before, is a laxative, which is just, it means it's going to make you poop more. And so it can create this sense of, detoxing and cleansing a bunch of stuff out of your body because you're having a ton of bowel movements and you're losing a ton of stuff that way. But it's not because this tea has magically cleansed you of something. It's because this tea is a laxative. So don't love that. Don't waste your money. You don't need to buy them. And my final point here, I'm not really going to add this to the list of myths, but just as a general notion, your diet and your exercise don't need to be perfect. There's no perfect way to tackle fitness and nutrition. The best way to tackle it is going to be the way that you can sustain over the long term. As with anything in this life, consistency beats perfection any day. So if you're trying to make strides with your fitness and nutrition, aim to do it in a way that is manageable for you Aim to do it in a way that fits into your lifestyle. Aim to do it in a way that you enjoy to some extent. And aim to do it in a way that it is going to be manageable for you long term without sacrificing your mental health in the process. Okay? Fitness and nutrition does not need to be crazy extremes and a ton of suffering and super restrictive approaches. It is really about a balanced, sustainable approach over the long term. Okay? Thank you for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.